Hey there, we're taking a look at Horizon Forbidden West running on the AMD Ryzen 9 7940HS. This is pretty much still AMD's highest end mobile APU, considering that the 8000 series mobile is just going to be a refresh of these with a beefed up NPU. That's really not going to matter in games for some time. But what this does mean is that we get some surprising levels of performance out of this, and this is about as good as it's going to get from the mobile APUs from AMD. We are running the game right now with the lowest in-game graphics settings, and we are using FSR set to the performance preset, and you'll see that overall the performance that we're getting here is kind of all over the place. The FPS averages can actually look pretty nice at times, though our 1% lows are what seems to be struggling the most. But this does seem to be a title that puts a lot of pressure on not just the GPU, but even the CPU is doing more work than I would have expected it to. Now, it should be noted that FSR, even though it is 2.2 on here, it doesn't look great at the performance preset. Visually speaking, when there's not a lot of motion, things can look fine enough, but as soon as motion is introduced, there is very noticeable fringing at the edges of pretty much everything, to the point where it becomes a pretty rough experience. It really seems like these more modern titles tend to struggle the most with the lower FSR quality settings, just because there's so much detail normally on the screen, and that detail really just gets lost at these extremely low upscaling settings. In general, it is a far more playable experience than anything that we would have seen out of Vega, but it's really those 1% lows that kind of drag down the whole experience. That being said though, playing the game with just the performance preset on might not be the best way to go about it. So let's take a look at what happens if we actually enable the dynamic resolution scaling, though looking at the numbers it doesn't really seem like we're going to be hitting 60 no matter what, so we'll let a target of 30 be the ideal spot for us right now. And immediately one thing that I noticed is that visually speaking things look a lot better. It's not using as aggressive of a setting for FSR to try to hit as high of a FPS as possible, but visually speaking, even though we are at the lowest graphics settings still, it does show that we can actually get a pretty passable result here. Things kind of fall apart though when it comes to those 1% lows again, because even though we are able to keep a 30 FPS average, it really does seem like the game is trying its hardest to keep a high visual quality, and it's really sacrificing performance in those 1% lows. It pretty much just stayed at the teens throughout all of the testing, and in general I think it shows that it's not exactly going to be an ideal experience. It definitely reminds me of playing games on the PlayStation 4 in its later years, where 30 FPS that was inconsistent was a pretty frequent sight. It really is surprising that the 1% lows were just so bad here, and you might actually be better off setting a target of 45, though I get the feeling that the 1% lows are still going to be kind of a problem there. Visually speaking, this game is absolutely gorgeous, and it has a lot of very interesting features in it that really make the overall visual experience here pretty demanding for a low-end system like this, even if the lowest video settings already look like a pretty major compromise. Not exactly a gorgeous looking game at the lowest settings, and yet we're still not getting the most ideal gaming performance out of this. Now, the game does not natively support AMD's frame generation, but you can enable that in the driver itself. Perhaps that will feel better for you, but me personally, I'm just not a fan of frame generation, but you are more than welcome to give it a go. It is one of the benefits of using this APU here is that you do actually gain access to that feature. But I would really say that this is an absolute pass on this chip. It just is too demanding of a title to really work well on here. You'd have to really want to play through the game and not really mind these 1% lows. And honestly, you might just be better off playing this on a 720p display. But anyways, I'll catch you in the next one.